Hey everybody. Before starting today's episode, I just wanted to read a quick 5-star review I snagged on iTunes. It's titled Legit, and it's written by somebody who goes by the name Harry Paratestes. Harry Paratestes says, "Really good podcast. As a person that can relate to a lot of the people being interviewed, you can tell that they are truthful and honest and really do a good job explaining the effects of the things they go through. Matt on the Matt episode seems like a really cool, smart guy, and everything he says I completely agree with. Great show. Thanks, Harry Paratestes." With that out of the way, let's get on with the show. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, how about you?
So, why don't you describe yourself for people who don't know you?
I would describe myself as a creative light that continues to grow. I describe myself as someone who sees art in everything. I describe myself as a lover.
Psychotropic presents Warren. What draws you towards art?
So, let's see. As you may have already or will soon tell, I like to describe things in a very, I guess, theatric way. And I have always done that as a kid. I was kind of a weird kid, just bouncing off the walls and making funny sounds and voices and body movements. And I guess it's just because I see myself as like maybe like a sponge or maybe a mirror. I don't know, like a mixture of a sponge and a mirror, whatever you want to call that, where I kind of like reflect everything that is around me and that I see. And then just kind of gives me like a joy in order to express on my own.
How do you choose to express?
Let's see. I love to sing. Been singing ever since ever since before I even realized that it's something that I wouldn't mind doing for the rest of my life. I like to dance. Writing has always been a passion of mine, and I've dove deeper into that in the past few years with writing poetry or stories or just ideas for stuff. And then there's acting.
You're an actor.
Yes. And I can say that because I get paid to do it now. Before, doing it in school is like you're an actor, but you're an actor in training. But I recently graduated. I have 2 degrees, theater arts. And kind of right off the bat, when I moved back home, I just auditioned for a bunch of stuff, and I got cast in about 3 different shows. And it's a lot, but it's going to keep me busy for probably the next half year. So I'm really grateful for those opportunities because not a lot of people get to finish their education and then get right to the stuff that they actually want to do, especially in the entertainment industry. Usually when you're like a more academic or STEM kind of major, then you kind of like make those connections and set things up for your future before you even, have your finals for your senior year,
Yeah, for sure. I recently graduated from school myself, and I ended up about midway through school, I realized that while I was extremely interested in the degree I was pursuing, it wasn't something that I wanted to stick with. Like, I didn't necessarily want to be a
What was it?
researcher. I got a degree in behavioral neuroscience, so it's kind of a psychology slash biology sort of a direction.
That makes sense.
And I started working in a lab up at school, and I ended up just realizing that it wasn't something that the lab part, what I wasn't passionate about. I was more passionate about the ideas that are generated from the research, from the data that we acquire through experimentation.
Oh.
And I was interested in trying to place myself in the universe based on that data. You know what I mean? And so I ended up graduating with a bunch of debt, and luckily I had, just before graduating, landed a job I live in Washington State, so marijuana is legal, and I landed a job as a THC extractor for a prominent edibles company, and that's where I've been. So while I'm not necessarily in the field that I got my degree for, I am still in the field of what I'm interested in, because it definitely ties into the things that I'm interested in.
That's perfect. I admire the outlook on life because people ask me all the time, what do you want to do? And I tell them I'm an actor, and they're like, oh, do you want to do Broadway? I'm just like, no, I don't necessarily want to do Broadway. I'm a very untraditional person with the stuff I want to do. Or I wouldn't say untraditional. It's just like not the typical thing that people think about. Like, I want to do voice acting. I want to write. I want to direct. And while I'm getting to that point, while I'm making money and just getting experience, I don't really care where I am. I don't care if I'm on a stage. I'm fine if like working in a theater. Or I also, during the summer, I teach children at summer camps. I go to like an arts summer camp, and I'm the drama instructor there. And I don't care if I'm teaching or just like even in a box office. As long as, like you said, as long as I'm surrounded by the stuff that like fuels my passion, then I'll be happy.
What draws you to acting?
Well, it's a funny story, actually. It was really cool that you said that you were a psychology major, you said at first.
Yeah.
And I used to be a psychology major because, growing up, I always, people could tell that was what I was good at, but it's not necessarily what I wanted to do. I think the first concrete idea that I had for my future was in middle school when I decided I wanted to be a psychologist, because the human mind baffles me, and it was something that was important to me because I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in third grade, and the way that we handled it then is way different than we do now. We have a lot more research and training for how to deal with that. But it was just really important to me learning how people think, because I had to struggle through not just the actual ADHD, but the stigma that came with it. And I would describe myself as a very empathetic person. So I wanted to be one of the people that helps other people with their struggles, because also people would always come up to me for advice. In middle school and high school, it would be friends, strangers, asking me for advice about I don't know, being sad or depressed or with love life. And they used to call me the love doctor in high school. So it was the idea of being a doctor who not just fix people's bodies, but fix people's hearts and then their mind, was really cool for me. But then kind of what you said, where it wasn't the actuality of, you went into a certain field expecting something, and then that's not what they do. So you found an outlet for that passion, but in a different area. One time when I was a psychology major for one semester in college, and then while I was doing that, I took a non-major acting class just for shits and giggles. And I've done tons of musicals in high school and even at my church when I went to church. And people would be like, "Oh, you're so you should do this. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to be a psychologist. But then when I took this acting class, I don't know, like my teacher, he was a hard ass, but I respected him so much because that means that everything that he says to you is genuine. And I really liked what I was doing. And he was just like, you can do this. Like one day he sat us down. We didn't do anything in class. He sat us down and he was like, what is your big picture in life? And people raised their hands. They would say, oh, to travel the world, or to have a sustainable job, to be famous. And then he kind of stopped and he said, no, those are goals. Those are like goals that you want to achieve. But like, what is your big picture in life? Like, when you die and you look back on life, what meaning do you want it to have? And I thought about it. And immediately I was like, I want to be loved and touch hearts. And when I say be loved, I don't mean like I want people to worship me, or I want people to just think that I'm the best thing in the world. I don't know. I mean, there were those celebrities like Chris Pratt. He's a great example. You know, Chris Pratt is like just a genuinely nice guy. People love him, not because they think he's such a great actor, but he also shows love to the people that he's around. He's such a happy person. He has like a sad story, and he shows like how much he works for his success and how much he appreciates it. And I just like want to set an example.
Set an example as in you worked hard for a certain degree of success and worked hard for something that you're passionate about?
Just set an example. You know how some people are just like, oh man, I wish I was them, or like they have a great life. I don't want people to like look at me and say, I wish I was Warren. I want them to say, look at what he does. I want that same level of happiness for me. I want to like show people how to work through their issues. And so I was given a choice basically in my mind, because I asked him, I was like, hey, I want to be a psychologist, but I think I kind of want to be an actor too. Is there a way I can do both? And he was like, I mean, well, if I asked myself that, I would be like, well, anything is possible if you put your mind to it. But he was a hard ass. And he said, it's very unlikely, because when you're a psychologist, you have your clients. So you have, first of all, many years of med school, depending on what you want to do, if you want to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But basically, there's a lot of training for that. And it's going to be a lot of, basically, if you can do a lot of things in your life, you can't just do one thing and then be happy. You have to put a lot of interests and hobbies in your life. But there's going to be one thing that drives you, and you have to find a way to organize that. And it would just be really hard to be a full-time psychologist and a full-time actor, because sometimes you have to, like, if you actually want to be an actor, then for like your career and make a living off that, then you have to just be on call 24/7, especially in the beginning, waiting for auditions. So I was like, I had to think about it, and I went to my car and I cried, because I'm the type of person, I'm kind of stubborn. I like to have an idea for the future and then stick with that. And then I was like, crap, it's not what I expected my life to be. And then I went home and I talked to my dad about it, and he was just like, you got to do what you think you're meant to do. And I was just like, well, I could be a psychologist whenever I want. If the acting thing doesn't work out, then I could be 50 years old and still go to school for it. And then I'll just be the 50-year-old psychologist who wears a blanket on his lap because he's cold. But you can't really do that when you're old and you want to be an actor. I mean, it's just harder. Like, the older you are and you don't have any training, the harder it is for people to like take you seriously or cast you. And I was like, I'm 18. Well, at the time I was 18, and I was like, if I want to do this, I have to do it now. So I changed my major, and I never regretted it.
I see. And I kind of feel like acting in a way is very psychological. Basically, you are learning the nuances of physical action that will allude to the soul, the intentions, the internal state of another person, and you're learning to mimic that.
Yes, exactly. Yes. That's why I was like, that's why I never regretted it, because like getting more into it, I realized how psychological and emotional it is. And I was just like, man, like I don't feel bad about this, because it all goes back to what's my big picture. I want to basically be an inspiration for people, and I could reach a wider audience putting myself out there on stage instead of having like people come to me in a room. I mean, that would be a more intimate setting, but sometimes people need to like have examples in their media. What we listen to now, like people who have therapists, that's awesome. And everyone should go to therapy, even if you don't think there's something wrong with you. It's just like a genuinely good thing to talk to someone who has a good understanding of how to deal with life. But we're not always in therapy. And we always look at our phones, we always look at the TV, we always see ads for movies, and those are basically the people that we see every day. And if I'm serious about what I want to do, then that means that there will be one day an opportunity for me to have that status. And the question is, do I want to be a light, or do I want to be a dimmer? Be like one of those things that you put on candles to snuff it out. Do I want to be a snuffer and make people feel bad about themselves?
What's your relationship to psychotropic substances, to drugs?
Well, let's see. A few years ago, probably about 3 now. Wow, it's been 3 years. I was pretty Christian, and I grew up Christian. And I'll talk more about that later, but basically, I was raised that drugs are bad, you don't do all this stuff, you should be high on the Lord. And I never really had my parents taught me about it in a very good way. They didn't really make me scared of it. They just said it was bad, but they still let me learn about it. So I just never felt the urge to do anything. Like, I've never had an underage drink. And, well, that's a lie. I had it once. But that's more to say than most people. I just never felt an urge, and I just never did drugs. But then my interest was first piqued when I was hanging out with, I was in college, and I was hanging out with my old high school friends, and we were just talking about what was going on with our lives. And this one dude, I'll call him Fred. Fred was talking about how he took Salvia. And everyone is just like, okay, whatever, Fred, because like they wouldn't be surprised. But I was interested. I was like, what is it? And he just explained that like he took it with his friends, and like it happens immediately, where like he felt like his face was being like melted off by sulfur, like layer by layer. And I was like, that sounds horrible. And it's like, no, it's not horrible. Like, it was kind of scary at first, but then it's just like you just go into another world. And like me being interested in psychology, that really interested me, because I was just like, how on earth are you saying that you took something and that thing grows out of the ground and it brought you to another world? So I decided to do some research, and doing research on Salvia. So it's really funny because like marijuana was like the third thing I've ever done. Well, no, the second thing, but I'll explain that in a second. Where I did research intending to do Salvia, like one of the one of the most potent hallucinogens that we know of right now. And it really interested me because, being a Christian, I was just like, according to my research, a lot of history shows that in Christianity, Judaism, and a lot of religions, people will use plants as like a ritual in order to like speak to God, or speak to spirits, or just like people have, I read a lot of experiences where people felt like they had like an experience of a deity. And I was just like, that makes sense. We say that this world is God's creation. And therefore, if you think everything has a purpose, because that's what Christianity at least says, everything that God makes has a purpose. And I'm just like, okay, Christianity, well, if everything has a purpose, what the fuck is the purpose of marijuana? Because it grows and it's not like we made it. Or a salvia or mushrooms or any of this. So it kind of made me question a lot of like the censorship in Christianity. And I was just like, I'm going to see if I can get a deeper connection with God. And then I decided, well, I can't start with salvia because I've never been high in my entire life. And I don't think it's smart to just take the most potent hallucinogen known to man. So I did my research and I was just like, how can I get high? I didn't want to do marijuana yet. And a lot of people don't know this, but there are thousands and thousands of plants that just grow probably close to you or around the world that have psychoactive properties. And the one that I came across is called blue lotus. It's an herb, it's a flower that grows on the Nile River in Egypt. And when you smoke it or drink a tea with it, with the ground herbs, then it will give a sense of euphoria. You don't necessarily it's kind of like marijuana, but just the euphoria. It doesn't inhibit any kind of cognitive functions at all. It's not going to make you super hungry. I mean, make you happy enough that you actually want to eat, but it's not going to make you forget things. It will just, you're high. It's kind of like CBD. I would describe it, Blue Lotus, as like it is taking really nice CBD. And I bought some. It's legal. It's completely legal. There's a lot, like most of the stuff that we hear about, like mushrooms, marijuana, heroin, crack, all the drugs that we know about today is because, they're illegal. And most of the drugs we started off being illegal because, well, I don't mean to get political, but like it's especially marijuana, it was made illegal as like a tactic to get immigrants out. A lot of Mexicans brought marijuana plants or cannabis plants here, and it was like a normal party thing. Like high class people would smoke marijuana at parties. Marijuana, sativa, indica tinctures would be sold in carts in medicine stores across America. And then later on, people started associating it with like violence, because basically the government wanted to find a way to get people to basically be mad at Mexicans. And you should do your research more about this instead of just like repeating word for word what I say, because it's hard for me to like remember specific facts. But like, I don't know, that show Adam Ruins Everything? They do like a whole thing about it. And so I was just like, okay. I just went on a whole rant about the legalization about plants, but basically those are the ones that you know about, but they aren't the only things in the world that will get you high, okay? And there's a lot of them are illegal. Salvia is actually not that well known of in America, so it's like legal in a lot of places. Like I know in Pennsylvania it is illegal, but in Maryland you have to be 21 years or older to just buy it. And so I just bought Blue Lotus and I got high from it, and it felt great. I did it with my girlfriend at the time in a previous relationship. She showed me how to smoke. I got my own bowl, and it was awesome, and it just felt good. It's like it relaxes you. It makes you feel happy. You don't stress over things, and it's a nice aphrodisiac. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready. So I bought some salvia. online. And what I did was I got organic salvia. I got an ounce. You can get like an ounce of organic salvia for $15. And all you have to do to really get high from it is take like two hits, you know? So that's a lot, but it didn't do anything. And I think it was because it was organic. And usually when people buy it, you have to get it in extracts where they take the psychoactive tryptamine within Salvia divinorum, and they kind of like make it potent and put it back into the leaf. And I was like, fuck, man. So, and I didn't have enough money to buy more salvia because like the higher the potency, the more it costs, which makes sense. So I was just like, well, I'm going to have to put that on hold. But in the meantime, I still was very interested in medicinal plants. So then my girlfriend at the time, she smoked, and she told me about marijuana, and she explained it to me. And I was like, that's something I'd be willing to try. So I tried that. And I was just like, oh my God. Everything that people have told me about marijuana is a lie. Everything. That it makes you violent, that it makes you lazy, that it makes you forget things. I mean, like, yeah, sometimes when you're high, you go off on rants and you talk a lot and you might forget, but that's just because, well, people will just like cuss it off as being like forgetful and it's a memory loss thing. But it's just like, no, if you do your research, that's because the CBD and the THC have connected itself with your brain receptors, and they are now firing at a quicker rate. So all your thoughts are kind of sped up and feel more profound. So it's really easy to get lost. But then you know how to come back, you know? And I was just like, it's different. And it's amazing. And I just felt happy. I was such a stressed kid, and I was very anxious. I mean, I didn't like have social anxiety. I had like my own type of like very quiet anxiety. And it was just hard for me to feel certain things, just like emotions. And it kind of just opened me up and made me less of a judgmental person. I didn't worry. And I was just like, this is amazing. I need to learn everything about this. And that's how I became a stoner.
How did things progress from there?
I just learned about marijuana. I learned about the difference between sativas, indicas. I learned about the different hybrids. And I'm still learning. Like recently I've like found out about tryptamine. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. You know, like the more, because I'm like a big advocate for it being like, I don't want it legalized simply for recreational stuff. Honestly, I don't really give a crap about it being recreational because, I mean, like it's illegal and people are still getting high. So I feel like once it becomes recreational, I'm like honestly surprised that it's not fully legalized right now. I want it to be legal because it's a fucking plant. It's really kind of weird if you think about it, that your government is telling you not to go towards something that grows out of the ground that we live on. It's just like, that should be a question. Like, if you don't even think about the drug. Just like, it would be as weird as like if the government outlawed oranges. You know, it's just like, why? Why outlaw oranges? And then they give you like a reason, and they associate it with something that you don't like, so it makes you afraid of it. But like, it's an orange. I don't really mind that it's illegal now because I'm surprised that it's not fully legalized, because we would make bank on it. You could replace everything with it. And I know that like a lot of companies are afraid of losing money, but like, I think those smart companies, the less stubborn companies are like, oh, I should probably get it. And they're realizing I should get in on this marijuana business because it's going to outlive all of us. You could make clothes, you can make gas, you can make energy from it, you can make medicine from it, you can make rope from it. All the stuff, the essentials that we need, you can get from hemp, which is why it was one of the first plants that we grew agriculturally. I'm glad that I can tell my grandchildren, hey, little Timmy, get that dumbass marijuana lollipop out of your mouth. You don't know what it's like to be a stoner. Back in my day, that shit was illegal. And we would have to get it from a guy named a dealer. And, you know, now I feel like in the future, when it's finally legalized, because it will, kids are just going to run around with fucking lollipops and there's just going to be shows about it. And then it's going to like turn into like a weird fucking pop culture thing, which is what capitalism eventually does with most normal stuff. I'm an advocate, especially for it being legalized medically, because it's just crazy how there are like there's literally proof. Like there, if you go on Facebook, you will see like someone share a video of like a little boy having a seizure, and then its mom is like holding up a phone. First of all, that's like really scary that like a mom, not saying anything to the mom, but like that's really brave for like they feel as much fear about getting this legalized to like videotape their child having a seizure and then putting the droplets of cannabis oil into their mouth so that it will heal them in 5 seconds as proof. They're like showing the internet. That's very intimate and personal. But they're like, look at my child. He is shaking in his bed. I can't do anything. But this plant can. A lot of people have to like go to a different state. They have to quit their job, go away from their friends and neighborhood just to go to another state so that they can have some fucking oil that doesn't even get you high. It's just for seizures. Like, and there's just like, what's wrong with having a kid have that? You know, like what if a kid in a classroom is having a seizure? Do you want to call the ambulance and then stop your lessons and then have kids be afraid so that they can get the help? That's just going to waste more time. Or do you want to fucking put a plant in their mouth and then you can tell the kids, hey kids, Timmy has seizures, but this thing that grows out of the plant, out of the earth, saved him? Or do you want to make a big deal about it? It has to be so dramatic.
Yeah, there's definitely a number of things there. Like when the mother films the child having a seizure and then she administers some marijuana extract or THC or CBD or anything like that, and the child's seizures subside, I bet you there's a lot of confusion experienced with a viewer, especially a viewer that's opposed to marijuana, because on one hand, even with me, even with somebody who works in the industry, I can watch that and on one hand, I'm against it because I don't necessarily think that we should be tampering so heavily with a developing brain. Who knows how that brain is going to develop once it has that potent exogenous substance, circulating through it. But on the other hand, what's interesting is like the demonizing of this plant is now juxtaposed with something that is beneficial. And it's done so through watching a child ingest it.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
it's a really confusing, taboo thing. And even then, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I don't know if I'm for it. It's a lot to process.
That's why we should at least take it off Schedule 1, so that because like you bring up such a great point about like we don't know what exactly it does, but we know that it helps, but we haven't conducted enough research, and that's just simply because we weren't even allowed. That's what I'm saying. It's not even like don't eat that orange and we're like, okay, we won't eat the orange. It's like don't even look at it. You know what? We're taking all the oranges away. We're going to put this in the lab. We're going to burn the oranges, and you're not allowed to figure out why. You're not allowed to study the orange. And it's like that's where it gets really weird. Not only are we allowed to like take it, it's like we're not allowed to have knowledge of why we shouldn't take it.
True. And it's like so with the whole Schedule 1 thing, a Schedule 1 substance is a substance that has no medical value whatsoever. And that video right there strongly suggests that there can be or is medical value associated with that plant. And so right then and there, there should be, and there is research being done on it. And so I'm definitely thankful for that, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. So one of the things that's interesting about my position and the work that I do is This is, in my mind, kind of a grand social experiment where we're going to find out if society crumbles in time with with the legalization of this substance. And I don't think we're going to know right away. I think what's going to happen is that we're going to start to realize it after after a generation of kids that have been exposed to the legalized version of it, how they develop and what they grow up into being, and we're going to see what society does. And I think that if
Hmm.
society ceases to function in an optimal way, like right now, I get to walk down the street and I have no fear. I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about just somebody. Obviously, this type of stuff happens, but it's not prominent in my mind for a gun to be pulled on me, for me to get robbed. And this also is partially a product of where I live in the world. But right now, I don't really have any fear. And things operate. I can order something on Amazon and I'm going to get it in a day if I want it. And it's going to be interesting to see how society develops around this now legalized powerful substance. Like marijuana is a strong high. It's a heavy fucking high. And we're going to find out what repercussions that has, especially on the developing brain. And if it gets to the point
Hmm.
where it's just too much, I hope that we have the power to say, no, we do care about the individual. We want the individual to be able to make their own decisions. We want you to be able
Yeah.
to take control of your own mind. That's your right. That's your privilege. It's innately your privilege to be able to control to be able to be the boss of yourself in such a personal level. But you also have an obligation to society because whether we like it or not, we are social creatures and we do need to work together. And if we're introduced with something that
Yeah.
breaks that working together down, then we kind of have some serious
Hmm.
questions to ask. But like what you were talking about with the reasons for it becoming banned, those reasons, that doesn't mean that those weren't based on our social structure breaking down. That was based on, I think you're right. I believe you're right on immigration, largely immigration and racial issues. And
Well, I mean, like, there's just like documented like quotes saying that there's like this person that like worked directly for the president. He gave a quote, and it said like it's in that video Adam Ruins Everything, and it says, "Did we know we used it to break up their communities, go into their homes, and stop them from doing the things that we didn't want them to do? Did we know that we were lying to the public about the drugs? Of course we did." Now, that's not a direct quote, but the last part, did we know that we were lying to them? Of course we did. And that's just scary. That is a real quote. And, with the whole, like, we're going to see how society works. I mean, like, that's true. We are going to see because, like, it is legal, like, fully legal in not Schedule 1, just, like, fully legal in a lot of countries. And it's been working out. And not like Canada, which just, like, recently became legal. I'll talk about it in just a second, but we can't always just. There's always those videos like, oh, look at what other countries do with this type of stuff. Why can't America do this? I'm like, well, because America is America and that country is that country. And we have our different cultures. And so we can't necessarily just. What works for some people, just like individuals, like what works for some people doesn't work for other people. I do think that like when that's why I predict that when we do fully legalize it, it will kind of like become like a fad for like a very long time at the beginning because we love to make a fad about things. We're like the advertisement hub of the world. But in other countries, I think Norway or one of the European countries, they kind of, how we have all the names for it. We have like thousands of strains, like Luke Skywalker and Girl Scout cookies and Blue Dream. They have rounded it down to 5 or 6 separate ones, and they have like very medical names because you're right, it is a strong high, but because they had access to research, we figured out how to like. That's another problem that we have in America. It doesn't matter what strain it is. You could have two of the same strain, but you get it from 2 different people, and it's a completely different high because we don't know how to like actually tell. We can't like measure how high you're going to get from this because we haven't had the research to do that. but other countries have, and they are like, okay, you have this, you take this much for this, and you have basically each one of the few you take for a certain purpose, and you take a certain amount, and it will always be that way. So I think, yeah, we will see if society crumbles, but I think that if we like show these, look at the same example of like, not necessarily doing it the same way, but making sure that we have the same intentions of like, we have to first figure out how much it takes to get to a certain level of high. Because now we just like, we kind of have like loosey-goosey terms like, oh, I'm buzzed, now I'm high, now I'm there, now I'm stoned, now I'm baked. It was like, that's not really helpful. It's not really a very measurable thing, is it? But it like makes sense to the people who live in that. It's like, oh, he's baked. Oh, he's baked. Oh, yeah, I know. No, he's not coming to the party. He's baked. You can't even move. But like other people will just fucking use baked for anything. Like, like my parents will do that. And if they think anyone's high, they're like, he's probably stoned. I'm just like, what do you think stoned is? Oh my God.
So you try marijuana, right? And you realize that it's not what you were led to believe it is. What is that high like for you?
Okay, so when I am high, I'm pretty much high all the time now. Because what I would express to people, it's hard to talk to someone who hasn't done it. But what I say is the weed will bring out your true intentions. It will bring out your true self. Sometimes when we are anxious about what we should do, it's really easy to become indecisive. When you take it, it tells you what you actually want, because you have become one. Well, I kind of like, it sounds really stupid. Well, it doesn't sound stupid. It sounds different. I like to say that when we take the plant, we are putting the essence or the spirit of the earth into us. And so when we do that, we become one with the earth, and it will speak to us and help us like figure out what we actually want. Like sometimes when I'm like with my friends and we smoke and we're like, oh, where do you want to eat, or what do you want to do? What should we do tonight? I'm like, let's see, let's smoke, and then the weed will tell us. So I think I'm a very intentional person when I'm high. I've never had a panic attack while I'm high. And I know that happens a lot with people. And I think that can happen for a lot of reasons. Well, actually, no. I think that can happen for a few reasons. Like whenever someone says, oh, I tried weed and it made me really anxious and I had a panic attack, so I just don't want to do it again. And I'm like, oh, man, that really sucks, and I'm sorry that happened. Can I ask you a question? Were you with a lot of people when you first did it? And they're like, yeah, I was at a party. And I was like, oh, okay. Did you have alcohol? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. And if they say no, well, if they say yes, then I'm like, well, you were crossfaded, and that's going to make you like, that's not being high, that's being crossfaded. You're mixing substances, which is why it's going to be different. But if they say no, then I'm like, okay, well, when you did get high, did you know what you were taking? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, was it sativa or an indica, or was it a hybrid? Do you know what dominant it was? What strain was it? And they're like, I don't know. And then I'm just like, well, that's because you hang around people who are just like, weed is weed. And I'm like, no, weed is not weed. Okay, that would be like as dumb as telling someone alcohol is alcohol. You sound like an idiot when you say that, right? Because there's scotch, there's gin, there's beer, there's wine, and there's different kinds in all those variations. And the people who are responsible with it know about that. But you just took something that you didn't know about. You didn't know what you were putting in your body. You've never done it before, and you were in a very scary environment. No wonder you had a fucking anxiety attack. Were people making fun of you? Yeah, they made fun of me because I was coughing, or they were like tricking me because I was bugging out. Well, that's dumb. That's rude, and I'm really sorry that happened. And then there are some people who like have certain conditions where it just like isn't the right thing for them, which is fine. Marijuana, like I said, marijuana is not the god plant. There are tons of stuff out there for people who like have schizophrenia. Like my friend, she has like kind of schizophrenia. It's like a personality disorder, multiple personality disorder. something that I feel bad that I don't know the actual term, but you know what I'm saying, where she's like, marijuana probably wouldn't be the best thing. And I was like, yes, I don't think that would be a good start. I don't think that would be something that's good. But then that's why there's stuff like Blue Lotus, where like it will just take away distress. It doesn't affect you cognitively. Well, I guess if it's giving you euphoria, that's where we have to figure out like our actual medical definitions of, is it cognition that gives us happiness, or is it mental or emotional, and when do we differentiate? But yeah, I'm aware that it's just not, some people aren't geared for that kind of stuff.
But it sounds like you are.
I'm very much. I think I was born to smoke weed. Like, I literally think I've been preparing my entire life to do it. Like, before I even liked it, I was just, everyone at school was always just like, Warren, especially in high school, because that's where people start to do the drugs, and they're like, Warren, are you high? And I'm like, no, I've never done that. And they're like, you're just act weird. I'm just like, I'm just my highest self. And then I got into incense because I love incense, and my mom was just like, why you want incense? And I was just like, because it smells good. And she was like, people use that to hide marijuana smell. And I was like, I did not know that, and I just went in for that. But now I'm like, thanks, Mom, for the tip. And then it has helped me so much with finally transforming. I think that I would still be, I don't think I would have progressed maturely, spiritually, socially, physically, actually, this much if I never had it.
You had talked about part of the reason you started off, or you set out on this adventure to experience and learn more about psychotropic substances, is because you wanted to kind of, what did you say, develop a better
I wanted to become closer with God.
Yeah, you wanted to become closer with God. How did that relationship evolve once you were informed?
Well, I remember during my early days of smoking, one time I got high, and I was just like, I should probably do the thing. Because at the beginning, I was just just having fun with it. And then I was just like, I should probably actually explore my spirituality now with it. And I sat down and I read the Bible, and I just opened up to a thing, and it said, God is love. That's a verse in the Bible. And I was like, oh yeah, God is love. And then the weed was like, no, wait. God is love. And I was like, what? And I just said it many times. I was like, God is love. Oh, I get it. Because when you're a kid and they tell you in church, God is love, but also he will hate you if you do all this stuff. It's really hard to associate, and it's also easy when you say he. And I'm like, no, love isn't a boy. Love isn't a girl. You're telling me these people thousands of years ago is trying to tell you this thing that you think that is this all-powerful deity that will put judgment on you and stuff like that, and it gets angry at you, and it's responsible for all this stuff, and it will divide itself from you. It's not that. It's not some bearded man in the sky. It is just love, which is why it says that God is within us, with the Holy Spirit, or what Christians believe to be the Holy Spirit is. It's because we are all love. That is the first source of everything. There's love in creation, even sad creation. When we see a picture of something that's really sad, it still invokes a feeling in us because it comes from a place of hurt, and we get hurt because we need love, and we're empathetic creatures. Everything is just love. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I get it. So that was the very beginning of me having a better connection with God, where I stopped seeing him as what I originally saw him and then saw it to be me.
And this is something that you feel like you obtained as a result of being able to have the experience of being high in order to look at that saying God is love at a slightly different perspective.
Yes, because it breaks down walls. It's easy for us to. So when I said before that, like, we think really rapidly, our brain receptors are firing quicker. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes when we are looking at something from another point of view, we have to just keep trucking along. Other times it's not. Sometimes we need to stop and slowly process things, and that's good. But a lot of the times we get in the habit, especially when we grow up with a habit or something being taught to us, that, when we think about what we know, we kind of stop at that wall of like where we cut off and say, I now know what this is. And it's easy to kind of just like not think that there's anything past that wall. And what weed and other psychoactive drugs will do, like LSD has done that for me, shrooms, even salvia, it will break down those walls and allow you to see what's beyond it. Because it's just like, it's not even in religion. It's just so weird that we're so stubborn to believe that what we know is just what we know, and that will be a fact forever. And then we'll also say, like, religious people say God is limitless. He is all powerful. Nothing is impossible with God. And then atheists or agnostics or people who generally like to stick to like a scientific point of view, we say that the universe is expanding. It's limitless. Infinity, which means no walls.
This episode was produced by me, Philip Johnson. You can find a list of all songs used in the description section of this episode. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe. Also, leave a review. Let me know what you think. Lastly, if you have a story that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Shoot me an email at psychotropicpodcast@hotmail.com and let's make something happen. Thanks again, everybody. See you next time.